and welcome back to Montana. Today is a cool, rainy day, which is glorious after having felt like weeks upon weeks of upper 80s, 90s, super dry. It's very unusual to look out and see fog. This morning several of us were like, is it fog or is it smoke? It is fog, so it's nice and cool, which got me into the baking mode. So I am going to try to do a cheesy jalapeno bread. I've never done this before, so let's see how it turns out. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Cece. My husband Kirk and I homestead in the big beautiful state of Montana, where we try to put food on the table no matter what happens and encourage people to follow along so they can do it themselves. So today I want to make some bread. I'm going to be using the cheddar bread recipe out of this Artisan 5-minute-a-day bread. I've made a video using this recipe before, minus the cheesy part of it. This recipe calls for a little bit of sugar, where the main recipe does not. So you can go check that video out here and you can see how simple it is. The recipe that I'm using, like I said, is identical to it, except I'm going to be adding a little bit of sugar, and then I will also be adding my cheese and my jalapenos. We picked up some jalapenos from a farmer's market and they said that they are hot and mild. We had absolutely no idea what we were getting into, and I don't see how they can say mild at all because there's not a mild part of that. And then I don't have any cheddar, so I'm gonna have to do a Colby. This is a Colby that's been sitting in my wine cooler aging. It does not look very pretty, hence why I have not got it out to sell for farmer's market, but I am going to go ahead and get it kind of cleaned up and see if it tastes good, and if it tastes good, I will be using that in my bread instead of cheddar. I'm going to be having the recipe. The main recipe calls for 4 1-loaf breads, like that's what 1 pound little loaf breads. I am going to cut that in half and just make like a medium-sized loaf of bread. So instead of 6 cups of flour, I'm only going to need 3 cups of flour. Instead of a full cup of cheese, I'm only going to need a half a cup of cheese. I really have no idea how many jalapenos I'm going to get, so let's get this cheese going. There's quite a bit of liquid in here, and I really don't know why, other than I've noticed in the past when there's liquid, the cheese is not as dried out. So let me get a wet paper towel here, clean that up a little bit. I am pretty concerned about him because he just does not quite feel right. I'm not entirely sure what this white is all the way around it. It smells okay. Let me get another one here real quick. This is the fun part about making cheese. You just never really know. Just when you think you have your cheese making down, and sometimes you get thrown for a loop. So let's go cut him open and see what he looks like inside. I've been told if a cheese is contaminated, it will have round, shiny holes in the inside, and sometimes it will smell. If it does not smell and has no shiny holes, the chances of a contaminated cheese is much, much smaller. There is no shiny holes. This is very much normal holes. They're not shiny at all. Let me take a little piece of him. That's actually really good. It doesn't have, yeah, it does have a Colby. I was gonna say it's a little bit sharp for a Colby. It's actually a pretty good cheese. So because there's still kind of a little bit of a moisture on the outside, I think I'm gonna take just a little bit of salt on a moist paper towel and just clean it all up, because salt is good for removing any kind of mold off the cheese. I don't think this is mold, I think this is just trapped moisture, and it kind of gives it that yucky outer feeling. But I think all it needs to do is get cleaned up really good. And the cheese tastes just fine. There's no signs that I'm scared to eat this. It looks like it's perfectly good cheese, so I'm gonna get it cleaned up a little better. Before I start chopping up the jalapenos, I'm gonna go ahead and get my water and yeast to go ahead and soak in here. Some people recommend that you do that and kind of let it get all bubbly and foamy before you put the rest of the stuff in. I don't normally do it, but because I have the time, because I need to cut up the peppers, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So I need 1.5 cups of water and 1.5 tablespoons divided by 2 is 3/4 of a tablespoon or something like that. So that's what I'm gonna get going now. I ended up shredding more than about 1/2 cup of cheese. It's okay, kind of like a little extra cheese, so that'll be good. All right, water and yeast. Okay, next step I'm gonna do is about 3/4 tablespoon of salt. The original like master recipe does not call for sugar, and this one does. I'm gonna go ahead and do the sugar because I understand sometimes when you're mixing ingredients together, a lot of times there is a reason for certain ingredients in there. And so I'm gonna go ahead and do 3/4 tablespoon of sugar, and then I will get my flour put in there. I chopped up some jalapenos. I have no idea how much this is. I just kind of winged it. So that's how I do things around here. Now time for 3¼ cup of flour. Okay, going to go ahead, dump the cheese in, and I'm going to go ahead and put these jalapenos in. This recipe, when you are done doing the dough, it will be kind of a very wet dough. That's very normal. It won't stick to your dough hook like a pizza dough or rolls or even a traditional bread recipe. It's a very wet dough. So you can see it's very wet. Looks pretty well mixed to me. So I'm going to turn it off, clean off the hook, and then just let this dough rest for about 2 hours. Then I'll come back and show you how I bake it. Okay, I have to drink a cup of coffee because it is raining and I just want to curl up on the couch and take a nap. So, coffee. The dishwasher's running, that's probably what you're hearing in the background. My oven just became preheated, so I'm going to pull the Dutch oven out. The bread turned out a little flatter than I like. It could be because the liquid from the jalapenos, and I didn't compensate for that when I put the flour in it, but I think it's going to be just fine. So I'm going to get this Dutch oven out now. Set the oven at 450. And stick it back in there for about 30 minutes. And then I think I'm going to try to do just a really simple potato soup to go with it for supper tonight, because I think cheesy jalapeno bread with potato soup would actually go really, really well. And since it's raining, soup sounds like a simple thing to do. So we'll check in again in a half hour. Okay, I took the lid off. Sometimes a half hour is not enough when I make like a bigger loaf like that. So took the lid off and I'm gonna let it go for another 10 minutes. The thing is with bread, it's very hard to overdo it and it's very easy to underdo it. So if I have doubts at all, I always put it in for an extra 5 minutes because I do not like gooey bread at all. So just let it go for another 10 minutes. All right, let's take a peek at her again. Okay, the extra 10 minutes might have been a little too much because it's quite brown on top, but like I said, I'd rather have bread that is for sure done than a gooey. Take a look at her. So now I'll let it cool off. We'll make some supper and eat it with our supper and let you know if it's going to be a bread that I'll repeat or not. It looks really good. That's pretty much exactly what I thought it would taste like. Because the jalapenos have a lot of kick to them, the kiddos may not like it when they bite into a jalapeno. I'm glad that I chopped them up really little because they're a strong jalapeno, but it's so good. Definitely we'll be making this again. So, hope you guys enjoyed. Dishing up some tomato soup, or potato soup for supper. And we're gonna just have kind of hopefully a relaxing evening. May have to go help Kirk put some new nesting boxes up, but very happy with this.